Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Warren. Today I'm going to be giving you a presentation on stress management. Specifically today I want to focus on coping mechanisms and things you can just use on the cognitive side, so how you frame things, how you think about things, how you rationalize about events, and how you can just sort of safeguard your mind against the effects of stress and sort of work on getting out of your mind and just combating that stress in different ways. So I just want to start off looking at this picture here. Hopefully this isn't you, but if it is, that's okay. So we're doing this presentation today just to inform you about some ways to help you not pull your hair out. Alright. So yeah, like I was just talking about before, we're going to talk about those coping mechanisms, but also I just want to create an awareness around stress because to first combat any kind of problem, whether it be a physiological problem, a problem with your knee or something in a certain performance of a sport, you really have to know the small detail. You have to know what's going on and how to sense that before you can even start countering the problem. So we're gonna talk about both awareness methods that you can use, sort of protect yourself against stress. Also, just to equip you with the methods to use this future with a client or even like I said yourself. All right. So what is stress? So stress is a physiological and psychological response. Basically, when the hypothalamus believes the body's being threatened, it sets off an alarm. And that can be from something as simple as, an awkward social encounter, a presentation, or, something as dangerous as maybe like an animal chasing after you in Alberta Provincial Park. Most people don't know that stressful events they can also be positive as well. I was reading the college undergraduate stress scale, and I found some interesting things that specifically like getting married is ranked slightly higher on a stress scale than the negative consequences of drug and alcohol use, which I thought to be very, very peculiar. But I did some further reading, and just like these positive events, they do require a certain amount of preparedness, and they just require the person to make a readjustment regardless of it's a happiness-filled event or a fearful-filled event. Specifically researchers found that in these positive events, though there was stress levels and though it is, in this case, higher than the drug and alcohol use, they often said that happiness counteracts the physiological negative effects of stress, which I thought was really, really interesting. So don't be fearful about engaging in any happy events like going on a date or, going to a gym you don't know or, that sort of thing. You know what I'm getting at. Alright, so there's two different types of stressors we have. There's acute, which is sort of, short bouts of stuff. Things like almost getting hit by a car, things that motivate you into staying safe, that prime you to fight for your survival. Those like short-lived, on-the-go sort of stressors. Also, there are chronic stressors, which are things that are posed to you on a continuous and repeated level. Things like a nagging relative or overwork, procrastination, a strained relationship, for example. There are a lot of chronic stressors that we don't even realize are in our daily lives too. And in this little fact I found, daily hassles actually have more of an impact on physiological and psychological health than major life events. So basically what that's saying is, putting off cleaning your room, which I often do, putting off doing a sign, or putting off, just small things like maybe not balancing your checkbook, or not really budgeting and making sure you know what's going on. Small things like that lie under the surface. It accumulates so much momentum and so much negative energy, and they cause such a physical demand on your body that they are more detrimental than something like a family member experiencing depression and that sort of thing. Alright, so stress, how does it work? So we have two different types of, we have cortisol and we have cholecyramines. Well, cholecyramines are norepinephrine, epinephrine, and both these, all three of these, they prepare our body for an autonomic nervous response. So basically, strips all the secondary functionalities away, like digestion, peristalsis, that sort of thing, and just focuses on increasing the heart rate, that blood pressure, blood ventilation, all that great stuff. It increases sensitivity through touch, through perception, with eyesight, through hearing, all those things, just so you can respond to a stressor. Also, it decreases pain sensitivity. And when this body is kind of in this turmoil, it helps maintain homeostasis. So just to discuss how it works exactly, just in passing. So when the hypothalamus detects a stressful event, It releases this hormone called corticotrophin releasing hormone, which stimulates the neighboring anterior pituitary gland, which then releases ACTH, adrenocorticotrophic hormone, which then stimulates the adrenal glands, releasing those both cortisol and cholecytamines. Alright, so just some interesting studies on Hans Selye in the 1930s, well, not on him, but about him. He actually just took a large group of rats and he exposed them to high amounts of stress, whether it be cold, whether it be painful stimulus, whether it be, you know, overcrowding them. Very, very inhumane research for sure, and sort of very controversial today with our very strong ethics we have in psychology and psychological testing. But he found some interesting findings. He found some interesting things about stress, wherein when they were exposed to these repeated amounts of stress, they developed enlarged adrenal glands from the amount of work the adrenals had to do to produce cortisol and catecholamines, as well as you know, shrinking of the lymph nodes, which is a major site in immune functionality, as well as ulceration in the stomach. So literally, the body was killing itself through stress. And this is something I want to just really touch on really quick and not sort of, you know, meditate on or hang much on. But I think it's good to be aware of, you know, the real physiological and psychological impact on stress, specifically the physiological aspect of it. So he coined this thing about when all these structures sort of change the amount of cortisol in your body. He called this the general adaptation syndrome. So there's 3 steps to this. There's the alarm phase. Basically, it's just when your body's highly aroused, you know, it detects the stress. The second part is resistance phase. Basically what that is you know, the body is adapting to its high state of arousal, so it's paring those unnecessary functions away. And the third and the most important one I want to focus on here is the exhaustion phase. So he coined this as an actual phase in stress, repeated stress, where in the exhaustion phase, the body's resistance collapses. You know, all those things that the body's stress defense, all the stress defense mechanisms, they cause gradual damage on organs. They can cause things such as aging, tumor growth, you know, irreversible organ damage, susceptibility to infection, or even death. And I found on my research, I found this word that kind of came up, and it was this Japanese word, and I didn't have any idea what it was. So I did some research, and because it was so correlated with the stress research I was doing, I just had to find out what this was. I searched it up, and karoshi actually means, like, translated into English, it means stress by death. So, or rather, stress by overwork. So with that, people, you know, there are a few instances in Japan before the advent of like unions and that sort of thing, people being watched closely. There are a few people who were working for Toyota, and they averaged over 80 hours of overtime, and they just fell dead, just because, you know, although the stress response is paring down those secondary physiological things, they're key to us, like our digestion, that sort of thing. So these people literally died from overwork and starvation. Alright, so just really quick on stress in the immune system. Forgive my impulses. Stress in the immune system. So just really quick on a study they did a while back. So they made a wound in students' mouths, and they observed them whether they were on vacation or in exams. And the kids who were on vacation healed much faster than those on exams. Secondly, I didn't know this, but I was interested by this, but social status actually has an impact on people's health. So the way they perceive themselves, maybe it has something to do with, you know, third variables, like engaging in, like, there's higher rates of alcoholism, drug use, you know, smoking, those sort of things. Overworked, underpaid, all those elements sort of factor into that, but they're more prone to suffer respiratory infections as a result of being lower class. And lastly, this is huge, because, you know, we live in a very high stress society, and I don't know, we see a lot of people, I think the majority of men really deal with stress in a hostile manner. You know, they lash out at someone, or they get angry when they get caught up in traffic, that sort of thing. And hostility is actually a better predictor of heart disease than smoking, high LDL intake, and high caloric intake. Yeah, that's remarkable, hey? Alright, so stress interpretation. So primary and secondary appraisal. So for primary appraisal, That's basically your mind identifies, or your hypothalamus identifies, is this a stress or is it not? And if it's not a stress, nothing else happens. There's no stress response. There's no perceived stressor. But if it's a secondary appraisal, then the mind asks itself, okay, do I have what it takes to be in control of the stressor, to overcome the stressor, and to get out of it alive? So the interesting thing with the secondary appraisal is that whether the mind thinks if it's a threat or a challenge. So a challenge is something like you kind of arrive on an even plane with. You think you can overcome it if you put the effort in. But a threat is something you kind of going into it. You're kind of going into it with a lack of, and they've shown that you actually perform differently when you perceive something as a threat versus a challenge. In today's day and age, there are so many different challenges. There's so many different stressors in our life that aren't actually stressors. Like, why do we need that stress? Why is it there? And we really need to begin like stress analysis on ourselves. Like, do we need this? Cast it away. Say goodbye to it. It's not serving our physiology. It's certainly not serving our mind either. So, like preparing for an interview versus lack of preparedness, you just think about this in situations. So if you don't prepare for this interview, you don't really know what the company's about. You're kind of speaking on eggshells. You're kind of looking to get out of there. You don't want to make too much eye contact. You think that the interviewer might see that you're not prepared, like through the way you look or something, and things just become mechanical, and you're not really yourself. Whereas if you prepare for an interview, you go on confident, you strike that strong handshake, you make the strong eye contact. You might even enjoy yourself, because you've prepared and you can just sort of rely on this preparation you've done. All right, so don't forget this guy. I'll explain this later, but don't forget this guy. All right, so coping strategies. Just a really quick intro about coping strategies, and this is sort of going to be the focus of the presentation. Coping strategies. Undoubtedly, one of the most important skills required for an individual to achieve well-being is the ability to cope. Effective coping strategies in conjunction with stress can be the difference between success and failure, or happiness and depression. There's so much stimulus in this world today and the way that we interpret that stimulus can make or break us. Remember that our brain can't discern between types of threats. It just knows it's being threatened, and that's a great point for really how we filter stress. All right, so we're just going to start with coping techniques around stress. So we have repression. What is repression? So repression means avoiding situations, suppressing thoughts, anything that reminds you of the stressor, and just remaining like artificially positive. Like, oh, okay, this is around this really stressful person at work. Okay, I'm gonna pretend I like them. Just kind of psych yourself up for things. But you're not really combating the problem. You're just sort of like bringing it in, and like instead of working on it inside yourself, you're totally containing it within yourself. And that has a physiological demand as well. They've done some studies where repressive coping can actually cause things like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, asthma, cancer, and all like remembering back just to what I talked about in the immune system and stress. Any stressor, whether it's contained inside yourself or going out to the world, it's going to affect your immune system. Secondly, and one of my most favorites, is rational coping. So I really like this because I really enjoy rational coping because, you really thresh out what it is that's affecting you, and you really just get honest with yourself, and you get relentless, and you just kind of stare into the eye of the storm of what's affecting you. So rational coping. This involves facing the stressor and working to overcome its intrusiveness. So 3 steps here: acceptance, exposure, and understanding. So, like I said before, you can't fix a problem unless you know what it is and you accept that problem. Exposure is finding the stressor, getting into that environment where it's caused, and getting more comfortable with its presence. And understanding. And this is probably I've done some classes in psychology and stuff, and that's kind of where I am so motivated to personally train people, because I know through personal training it's a huge medium for regulating someone's mental health and making them feel better about themselves, whether it be a mental health perspective or self-esteem. That side of personal training was what really gets me on fire. So this kind of touches on that. So just asking the questions about the stressor, like, why is it there? You know, is there a purpose there? Is it, you know, does it still have a purpose? Is it a purpose that you